if you don't take a seat at the table at the end of the day, like nobody's going to pull out the chair for you. And so you've got to do a good job of that. And it took me a long time to realize that it's really not about the experience. It's about what you do with it. And so the more confident you can be in who you are and what you bring to the table and like just saying yes to those opportunities, the better.
You're listening to the Retail Crime Intelligence Podcast by Auror, where we share actionable insights to help you reduce crime and violence in your stores. Cassie, thank you for taking the hour out of your busy schedule to talk about this topic and chatting a little bit on your career, but just appreciate your willingness to do this. And how's everything going down there in Bentonville? Is living the dream on this fine Thursday?
Yeah, it's great. It's a little cold. I didn't think that this place got that cold after living in Denver, but it does. Shocker. I think it was like 3 degrees this morning, so it's a little cold, but we've got a lot going on. A lot of stuff coming up, a lot of cool things that we're working on. So it's been an eventful week, we'll call it.
Yeah. It's cold here in Denver right now as well. I was in Arizona this weekend for a little relaxation and got back home. I was still in shorts and t-shirts. I was like, okay, this was a bad idea.
Poor decision.
Poor decision. So Cassie, appreciate you taking the time. I obviously got a few hundred questions I could ask you about, career development and leadership, but you know how I roll. I just want to know, and I want the audience to know more about who is Cassie outside of work. What fills your cup? What fuels you? And how do you spend your time when you're not developing amazing teams at Walmart?
Yeah, you're too kind to me, Bobby. But I would say, like, first and foremost, we all know that work-life balance is a pretty difficult thing generally. But I would say over these last couple of years, it's been a much better thing for me, especially with the leaders that I've been able to work with and work for. I would say right now, like, I'm a boy mom, like, first and foremost. Like, it's the fun part about being a mom is being a boy mom, in my opinion. I was telling somebody this earlier, but I don't know what I'd do if I was a girl mom. I'm not like girly enough, and I don't know that I could deal with that. So like props to those out there that are. But I am a boy mom. I have a 9-year-old son named Nolan. He's freaking amazing. And I spend a lot of my time with him playing video games, running around, being outside, doing what we can do. We love to like get outdoors and hike. For those that don't know, like Arkansas is actually really, really gorgeous. We have some amazing bike trails. So really just getting out and doing that. I'm not a great biker, so I'll just like hike them and then like get out of the biker's way. But I do a lot of that, and then just, trying to keep myself kind of organized in a way. We were talking before the webinar started about like how we're all like actually a mess on the inside. We just act like we have it put together. But things like exercise and things like that for me are my way to like keep myself together, get myself ready for the day. So like those are the things that like help me and fill my cup to keep me, organized and thoughtful and not like overly emotional about the way that I handle things on the day to day.
Nice. What's Nolan's go-to video game right now?
Oh goodness. He loves Mario Kart. He loves Mario.
Good one.
All of the Mario. I was in New York for NRF. Obviously, we were both there several weeks ago, and I always have to go to the Nintendo shop and get like him a new game. Like, even though you can buy it at Walmart, like it has to come from the Nintendo shop. So
yep.
I always like joke with people that I am the husband that buys the wife flowers because he's gone all the time. Like I am the mom that like buys her kid everything he wants because like, oh, sorry, mom's got to go to another work meeting. But like, but he loves it. He benefits definitely greatly in the end.
Yeah, that's fantastic. As someone that's also a road warrior, I feel what you're feeling. I actually I called home earlier in the week, and my son, who's 4, Ford, gets on the phone and says, "Dad, I've been a really good boy while you've been gone." And I was like, "Oh, thanks, buddy. Like, good job." Yeah. The next thing out of his mouth was, "Did you get me anything while you're on the road?" And so like they just start to expect, right? Like the video games or something from the Nintendo store. Legos are the new thing. You always buy something. Always bring something home. That's for sure. Well, Cassie, you've been in a few different roles at Walmart. Shifting and thinking about what you're doing in your current role, why don't you just give the audience a little flavor of what you're responsible for, the team you're leading at Walmart currently, and what's your major focus right now?
Currently, I get the opportunity to lead a group called Enterprise Security, which is basically just security transformation. And we get to do this for Walmart as well as Sam's Club and supply chain. And the idea was that we needed a strategic approach, not just to like how we maintain the day-to-day, but how do we think about the future state of what we want our company to look like? And we've really started with the US segment. We're just starting to get into some of the international segments as well, which is super cool. But it's a great opportunity. I have a phenomenal team that takes super good care of me. They are much smarter than I am, as these things always work. But they work on a lot of the technical pieces of it, new security, emerging technology, things like outreach, supporting different things, whether it's the legislative piece of it, but also just like how we think about associate sentiment as we deploy these things as well. So, yeah.
That's a wide scope you've got going on there. And is it 15 years at Walmart? Maybe it already has passed. Is that am I correct?
Almost.
I did a little LinkedIn stalking. So
yeah.
Okay. So
I am a LinkedIn Plus member, so I saw that. It's okay.
I got to make myself anonymous, don't I?
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah. So almost 15 years. You're right, Bobby. So it'll be 15 in July. Pretty crazy to think about that, because honestly, it doesn't feel like it's been that long. Makes me almost feel just like old saying that. But yeah, it's been a great ride, like a lot of different jobs, a lot of different opportunities, lived a lot of places. But yeah, it's been great.
I always love this question because I think there's a lot of accidental retail careers, right? How did you get into retail in the first place?
So it's the whole story of like, you start out with the company expecting that, it's just like a part-time thing and you're never going to be with the company for this amount of time. And now I'm like, it's been 15 years almost. So I actually, ironically, was initially going to go to school for like dance and music. Was actually what I was originally going to go to school for. And I was going to go to Milliken in Illinois. For those that know Illinois, know that area. It's a really, really good dance school. And I had gotten a scholarship to go there and all of these things. And as luck should have it at the time, my mom had actually gotten a bit sick and I needed to be closer to home. And so it was one of those things where I pivoted last minute. I decided to go to community college. And so like the second thing on my mind, which, I wasn't going to turn dance into a career by any means. As we all know, college degrees change, was I decided to pivot and go in for psychiatry and psychology. And that was really interesting. And I still joke that that's like 90% of my job because we deal with people. I pivoted and I did that. And at the time, I had to pay my way through school. And so I started with Walmart. It was like one of the only things in the town that I lived in as a way to pay through school. And you start to work for retail and you start to realize all the career opportunities that await you. And I remember having an assistant manager that sat me down as I was telling her what I was going to go do. And she said, do you know how much a Walmart store manager makes? And I was like, no, I have no idea. And she, rattles off some things and I'm like, whoa, that's life-changing. Right. And so it was just this moment of influence for me where I remember her name, Becky Bishop, she spent additional time with me. She wanted me to grow within Walmart. And so she invested a ton in me. And that's the reason why I got into retail, but it's ultimately the reason why I stayed also.
Yep. There's always that. I think everyone probably in the retail career has that first person that you poured into you from a leadership perspective and really helped drive that next level for you in an individual. I know the name from the Grand Forks Target store, the first ever store that I was a part of. And Lucy up there was her name. She was absolutely epic. It's funny how those leaders do stick with you. So you're no longer in APLP. I know you play in this space a bit, right?
Yeah,
but
just a little bit.
What got you into that LP AP space, as we say back in the day, right? 14, 13 years ago. So
yeah, I'll tell you, it always has to do with leaders. What our jobs are is to constantly just be recruiting different talent. And this specific leader, and I don't want to give him too much of a big head, and Kyle Smith I know is on here, so he'll probably tell him I mentioned his name, but Jared Wasselman was my BAPM actually at the time. And I had just gone into the assistant manager program. I was going to go be an assistant. And I remember him telling me you need to go into AP, you need to go do this basically. And he was invested a ton of time in the store with me, spending time with me, doing all these things. And he was very hard on me, but in a good way where I felt like I was consistently growing. And he's actually a BU leader for the West now. So it was a really cool, fun story of us flipping each other out, brother and sister style. He just invested a ton in me. And I felt like I had a lot of trust with him as a leader to go and do that. And at the time, I felt like the other leaders that were asking me to work for them, I didn't feel like they had my best interests at heart. And so I jumped ship from ops and I went into AP, and I definitely called him at least the first week, maybe second week, and was like, why did I do this? And why did I let you do this to me? Like, I was probably crying, most likely, going like, what did I get myself into? But he helped me through all those things. And so like, again, I think it just comes back to like people work for people. So like I felt comfortable that was the right decision at the time.
That's awesome. That's a good transition. There's always a fair amount of tears when you go from ops to AP or AP back to ops. And yeah, we've all done it in our careers. Cassie, I think you and I we met probably was 2019. I think I'm coming up on almost 6 years at Auror. And one of the tasks that Auror gave me was to, try to run a pilot with the world's largest retailer, within the first couple weeks of starting here. You were the MAPM back in, I think, were they called MAPMs back then? I can't remember. Yeah. You were the MAPM in Chicago. I just remember coming into that market, getting to know you, getting to know Chad up in the Milwaukee space. But if you look back, like, so it hadn't even been 6 years. And you went from MAPM, you went to running a region. I think you ran a business unit out west. You just had an absolute incredible trajectory, right? A hockey stick career, if I'm gonna, quote my boss. That's huge growth, right? It's absolutely incredible growth in such a short amount of time. When you look at that, like, what are your leadership principles that have fueled that success? Like, what do you hold true to in the way that you lead that has gotten you into the seat you are today?
I've been very blessed. I've also been very lucky to have really good teams. Like I said, always surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. I've always had great teams. I've also had some really great leaders that have took some good chances on me. But I think a lot of that comes from how do you, as a person, consistently say yes to opportunities? Like, don't be too afraid. Like, don't hold yourself back. There were many of those opportunities where, like, I remember one of them specifically being the BU lead role, where I had zero intention of applying for that role. And Kristen Keefe called me and said, what in the heck are you doing? Like, why is your name not in this requisition? Like, get your name in this rec. And so I think sometimes it's, about the people, also the leaders that you work for and being there. I think you got to put yourself out there based on that. It's like, if you don't take a seat at the table at the end of the day, like, nobody's going to pull out the chair for you. And so you've got to do a good job of that. And it took me a long time to realize that it's really not about the experience. It's about what you do with it. And so the more confident you can be in who you are and what you bring to the table, and like just saying yes to those opportunities, the better. One thing that sticks with me, though, still to this day is, one of the job moves that I made was into doing the operating model work. So fully coming into the office, doing more of a strategy role. And I had that leader at the time, great Kathy, who called me and said, like, what's the last job that you want to hold with the company? And that was really powerful. I hate that question, by the way. And like most people do. But it made me think about, like, what is the last job? And, for me, it was, okay, if I want to be Greg and I want to be this leader of transformation and innovation, like, what do I have to have on the resume, or what do I need to give myself less imposter syndrome and put in the tool belt so that I have that experience when the time comes? And so some of those pivots and some of those opportunities were just based on trying to be more intentional too about like what I felt like I needed to be a better leader for my teams too.
Yeah. Aim far, right? But there's fear in that aiming far aspect, but don't let that fear win.
Yeah.
Take the chance. So
people get worried about, like, if I put it on paper and what if it doesn't come true? Like boo. At the end of the day, like, if you don't put it on paper, it's never going to happen because you're not putting yourself in this position to want to reach for something. So like, you have to put yourself out there and like tell people about it too. Like, I tell people that that's my goal because like, I want people to push me towards that. Like, if they see that I'm straying away from that and like, maybe that I'm not holding myself to account on the things that I am capable of, like, I want people to tell me that, Yeah.
Yeah. That's fantastic insight. And I think you've got to develop in your own skill set in every single one of these roles. But as your role expands, your scope expands, there's a lot less time, right? And you've got family at home, you've got a much bigger job at work. But how do you make the time to develop in yourself and focus on personal development? And what are some of the strategies you use to make sure that keeps happening?
I would love to sit here and tell you that I'm like perfect at it, but like that would be a lie. I do think I have like a backward strategy. So like, I'll answer your question, but in a backwards way. my way of holding myself accountable in a lot of ways is like I actually do mentor circles and I actually do multiple of them. But why I do this is I will generally assign my mentees to do something like, hey, do this thing over the next 30 days. And then we come back together and we talk about it. So like we'll read a book, we'll do assignment, we'll talk about like leadership execution, like what are the goals that you have for yourself. And what it does like inadvertently is like if I'm going to ask people to do it, I'm not going to not do it either. Yeah. And so it holds me accountable from a personal development perspective. I'd also say like the other thing is like we often think from a self-development perspective that you have to wait for the job to give you the experience. And that's not really true. I've had a lot of imposter syndrome at times in my career where I've thought about like, what would happen if I put my name out for this specific job and like, what would be the questions that would be on paper? But if you can do a good job of like leveraging your network or leveraging people that know, maybe people that you don't know. And oftentimes I'm just saying like, what are those experiences? And instead of waiting for the job, like, how do I just create kind of milestones for myself to go and reach out to this person? And like, for me, it was, I had a really good friend in merch ops and like, I don't know as much about that space and supplier integrations like that. And so it's just like, hey, like Antoinette, I want to spend time with you. I want to do some of these walkthroughs, like just holding yourself accountable to little things, because it doesn't have to be these large, grandiose things that develop you, but like that gain experience and you gain value from, and you get like connectivity back to the business.
Yeah. And don't let that imposter syndrome sit there for too long, right? Like tap that network, get in, have more of those conversations. I think you've said a few times, it's probably 2 or 3 times already on this webinar, like hire the right people, like to fill those gaps that, and you learn from them. And that makes you the better leader for the next spot. When you look at you from, store ops or operations to AP back to, into corporate strategy, and you've kind of bounced around all those aspects, like how do you adjust your leadership style depending on, because it's very different teams, right?
I would say like situational leadership, like if you guys haven't gone through the course, like I think it's a highly valuable thing, because it's not just about like the segment of the business that you're operating, it's about meeting people where they're at. And a lot of these are like you're surrounding yourself with a team. You have to understand like what they need, what you need, and how are you kind of filling those gaps as necessary. The really cool part has been realizing it's not about me, right? It's always about like the team and what the team needs. And specifically thinking about like how I adjust. It's not that I'm going to come in and lead the exact same way every time. Like I need to adjust the way that I work to better fit the team and better suit the team. And what it's been able to help me with as a leader is that I am far more adaptable. And, it's been really cool to toggle between strategy and tactical and like having kind of both of those to work between, because, in one job, you're generally going to be a little bit more of either. And it's always helpful, especially as I'm getting the opportunity to do the fun stuff, like promote people and like have those conversations with them. That's like, hey, you're really tactical. You now need to raise up and be like, 70% strategy, 30% tactical, but helping them understand what that means. Because there's a variation of like what strategy is in the industry and like what is being strategic. And there's not like a perfect answer to it, but we have to adjust based on the team. And a lot of it's just learning from the team, again, listening to the team, understanding the needs of the group, because at the end of the day, you're predominantly leading people and the rest of the stuff you can figure out. But it's more about like how you get the whole group of people moving in the same direction.
Yeah. If you come into a new role with an existing team, is there anything that you're doing, within the first like 3 or 4 weeks? Like what do your one-on-ones look like with those individuals to accelerate that understanding of, okay, I have to do way more recognition with this individual than I do with that individual. And that person likes recognition privately. That person likes a celebration recognition. Like what do you do in those first couple of weeks to get to that understanding so you can pivot and adjust?
I would say like it's a lot about being really open, especially your first couple of weeks. It can feel like you have to like fill up your calendar with a bunch of stuff just to be like learning everything. And it probably drives my teams nuts, but like I like to just have open pockets of time on my calendar where I can just walk around and talk to my team and like get to know them better, know what's going on in their lives, like what are they working through? Because that'll teach you a lot about a person on its own and like how they like to work through those things. But also there's like a piece of it that they want to feel is really intentional. and like they want to have a seat at the table with these kinds of things. And so I think it's also like being really intentional about spending time with them on like, what are their career aspirations? Like, what do they want from this current job? Is this a thing where you want to be here forever? If so, like, how do we think about challenging you differently versus a person that wants to be here for a year and they want to be promoting? And you've still got to balance that, because you can't just focus on the person that wants to promote and not the guy that's like, I'm still trying to learn and understand the business. For me, it's a lot around just having this kind of open door policy. We talk about it like at Walmart a lot, but for me, open door is like people feel comfortable that they can come and talk to me about things regardless of their level. Like I have, several senior managers that report to my senior directors that I feel very comfortable to be able to just like come and talk to me at my desk,
That's
or
awesome.
vice versa.
Yeah. Because I mean, at the end of the day, sometimes titles are scary. But if you're a human, right, and if you're a transparent human, and I love the idea of like bebopping around, doing a desk check here or there, like that just makes you feel so open to others, and then titles aren't as scary, right? And it's just Cassie. Like I just need to go ask Cassie for advice, and so that's a good approach. One of the things that I remember so strongly about the original pilot with Walmart when you were in the back as a MAPM was his name was Ryan. I think he was a AP store manager, and running. I can't remember what it was. A Skokie store. It was the
Skokie. Yeah,
that one. Yep. He was running that store, and like one of the things that I was just amazed at on the few visits we had there is like Ryan would have followed you through the fire, like. Yes, Cassie, let's go. I'm on it. Let's move. We got this. Like he was just all in to your leadership approach. And that it's tough to build that loyalty, right? But that loyalty drives strong results, right? And what was your approach with someone like Ryan? You probably have 40, 50 Ryans, but I just got to observe that one moment. How do you build that in your teams?
Ryan's actually a store manager now too, which is
that's awesome.
Cool.
Really?
Yeah. He runs the Algonquin store, which is pretty awesome. So I'm super proud of him. I just saw him not that long ago. So I think of like situations like Ryan too, where like he took a really big risk because, he was in ops, he was a front end assistant. And I remember just thinking like, oh man, he's so good. I needed someone. I had just taken over that market, and Skokie was the highest ranked store in the entire state. He had the ability to come in and like learn the business and really like get the influence of people. But a lot of it came from like, I feel like he and I had built just a really good relationship from a trust perspective. Like I tell this to people all the time, like there's something in AP where people kind of feel this out to get you vibe, right? At least operations has always kind of had this. I think we've gone away from that a lot. I think we've done a lot in the business to make people feel like that's not the case. But like 9 times out of 10, when I'm telling my team about an issue that they're like, I can't get the store manager to buy in, or I can't get this person to do it, it's because like you don't have their trust. And when you don't have their trust, you can give people feedback all you want. But like if they don't feel like you have their best interests at heart, they're not listening to it.
Yeah.
And so a lot of like the things that I think help me with building teams is just like putting a ton of trust into people, obviously reciprocating that as well. And like when people feel like I have their back, and like I may yell at them because they do something stupid, I'm going to be honest with them. I'm going to help them understand where they're at so that they're successful. But I'm also going to have their back in the situation too. And I'm not going to let them fall. Right. And so like if it comes down to it, like I'm going to be there to support them. And so I think it's a lot of like, as a leader, you can be honest with people. You can really push them. You can have really high expectations, but you also want to have that trust built with them, that they feel that you're going to have their back when it all goes down. Right. And I think that's a lot of it. And, I feel like my team would say that like at the end of the day, I am always going to have the best intentions and the best interests of my team. And I also am one of those people, like I hired Chad Hastings as my new director on enterprise security. And when I did the interviews, I remember telling the HR guy, like I had all these people in there that I didn't know super well. And I remember telling him they have great resumes, but like, what happens if I can't trust them? Like I will fire them. Like if I can't trust them, like it, and that sounds terrible. Like it's probably not the thing to tell HR, but like I needed someone that I can trust on my team. And I need that reciprocated, right? I need like people that have integrity and ethics, and like I can give you all the rest if you have the will and the want to do it. But a lot of it is just like he and I built that trust. And, I feel that's a really common thing that people miss when they're trying to keep people on teams.
Yeah. And I think a lot of what gets missed with trust isn't always 100%, right? Like our teams always talk a lot about trust batteries, right? And there's going to be moments where I did something that drained the trust battery between me and someone on my team, right? Or they did something and it drained it. And so trust and the trust battery concept is really interesting. Like you do have to keep, just because you have trust once or you built that trust to 100% doesn't mean that it's always going to be there. And you have to keep having those moments, right? Of checking in like, hey, Cassie, it feels like I did something there. Let's talk about it and let's have an open and honest conversation about it. That's really insightful and kind of leads me nicely into the other side of leadership, which is feedback's a gift, is what I heard a lot at Target. But it is a huge part of leadership. What's your philosophy on giving and receiving feedback, and what have you found is the most impactful way that helps your team grow?
Yeah, my boss tells me feedback is a gift a lot, so I understand that phrase very well. I actually put it on a cup for myself for Christmas this year, but I would say, like, number one, like, it starts with how you receive feedback as a leader. I think, like, often we're really good at giving feedback, but we're not always really great at, like, getting it. And so I think it kind of comes back to the openness of, like, if I'm going to give someone feedback, I expect that they can give me feedback also. And that can be reciprocated. And sometimes that's how I open up the lines of communication on feedback, is like, you give me feedback first so that people feel confident or comfortable to be able to do that. And then they know, like, we're both kind of in this together trying to solve for some things. I think, like, candid is kind. Like, people need to know where they stand, but, like, you also have to do it in a way that's fulfilling to the person. And, especially it kind of comes back to this, like, whole meeting people where they're at. But, like, there are certain people that it's just like, lay it on them, they can take it. Some of us as, like, operators too, like, that's just how you grew up in the field. Like, you get used to it and you move on, right? There are other people where it's like, if you gave them all that feedback in one pass, like, they'd be like, oh my gosh, they hate me, they're going to fire me. Like, it's the end of the world, right? And so you have to figure out how people best receive feedback, but then you have to give it to them. And, like, part of that is understanding, even if you feel like they can't take it, they still have to receive it. Otherwise, you're putting them in a position to not be successful in the future. And so I think that's really important, but it's also about how you ask for it. I do think we can get into this space too, where we only ask for feedback from our direct teams, but also how you get out is a big piece of, like, where I've made really good relationships is, like, getting out and asked BU leaders, different SVPs, different folks, like, what is your perception of me? What does my brand look like to you? What is the feedback that you would have? And sometimes you don't like the answer, but, like, that's the point.
Yep.
You ask for feedback to get the real. So
that's amazing. And what was that? The saying, candid is kind?
Yeah, it's way better than that, but, like, that's the one that I remember. So there's a much better way to say it, but that's the one that I got.
It's so true, right? Like, if you kind of, like, beat around the feedback, right? Like, in these moments, like, candid is kind. And if you have the trust, you got to lean in on that. And never fun to hear that about yourself. It's never fun to give that type of feedback. But what is fun is what do you do with it after? And, like, how does it level you up? How does it level your team up? I absolutely love that saying. And I know there's probably more to that saying, but we'll put it on a poster here up inside of the Auror office, and we'll put Cassie underneath it for you. That's a great way to think about feedback.
I actually just got the correction of it too. One of my counterparts in transformation, Roger, just sent. He was correcting me very nicely. He's giving me feedback. So
feedback in the moment, like
clear
on a
is
webinar.
kind.
Like,
yeah, clear is kind and unclear is unkind. So that's the saying. But
that's absolutely awesome, Cassie. I mean, going along the feedback space, in your experience, what's the biggest mistake that leaders make when it comes to team development? Like, what's that, like, that one thing that you see that is usually a derailer in that space?
I'll tell you the one thing that drives me crazy. We'll start with that. When people use the word they, like, as the team, like, they do this, they've done that, like, it's no longer about you and them. It's like we. And so like it starts with understanding that, because I think that premise is what helps people understand, like, as a leader, it's no longer about you. And so like people will talk in that way. I think there's also this piece of like, I get really concerned when we're like crediting people at a certain level and giving awards and things like that, because it's like, it's not that person that did that thing, it's the team that did that thing, right? And so like being really clear about that and understanding that like at the end of the day, we don't ever do anything on our own. We do everything as a function of a team. And so like giving credit where credit's due. I think like there's also this piece about, because of that, when people don't think that way, it kind of goes back to the whole like, you don't just come in and lead a team the way that you feel like you need to lead the team. That also goes with like giving advice to people of like, I would do this way, you know, because that's the way you've done it. It's again comes back to, you need to give what the team needs.
Yeah.
And the team has to give what the team needs. And so as a person, as a leader, I have seen many leaders that have come in and tried to run the team the same way that they would run a different team, or they try to lead every person on the team the exact same way. They want to micromanage everyone, or they want to delegate everything. And that does not work. You have to be the leader that the team needs you to be, and you have to give what the team needs.
Yep. Yeah. And I love the they versus we, right? It's words matter, and it's a mindset, right? It is a mindset. And I talk a lot. The team gives me a hard time because I might love Mighty Ducks way too much. The movie Mighty Ducks, quack, 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 right? Yep. I knew there was a hockey fan on the other side there. But I say, like, we talk a lot about ducks fly together as a team, right? That concept is important. And so the words you use while talking about that is equally as important. All right, Cassie, 2 more questions for you, and more focused on advice for the audience. And then I do see that there's some questions coming in, and I'm sure Julie will ask them for us. But what's the one piece of advice that you received in your career that's just stuck with you and helped shape the leader you are today?
That's a hard one. I would say maybe it's not really advice, but maybe things that there is a part of being a leader that is you learn equally the same amount of things from good leaders that you can learn from bad leaders.
Yeah.
And it's all about how you choose to take that. Often when we work for bad leaders, we're not getting anything from that experience. But honestly, like some of the things that have stuck with me are the things of like when I worked with really bad leaders. Actually, my very first store manager with the company called me buddy for like 2 years of my life, didn't know my name. And then when she did know my name, I didn't want her to know it because she'd scream it for, halfway across the store when I was trying to take care of customers. But like having a leader that was really disconnected, touring stores that was trying to put 1,000 priorities out there and like weren't meeting people where they're at. And like, those are 2 things that have always stuck with me that I've always said in my career. I'm never going to not be able to like say somebody's name, remember their name, remember the face, like be able to translate those conversations appropriately and make sure that I'm meeting people where they're at. But also like staying connected to what's actually happening inside the business is so important. And like, it doesn't become less important when you're at the office, it becomes more important. While it's not necessarily advice someone's given me, it's things that like I've learned watching other leaders that I think defines like who I am as a person and who I am as a leader, but are things that like I will continuously like keep with me for the rest of my leadership career.
Awesome. That's awesome insight. And then last question for you. And then Julie, I'm sending it over back to you, Julie, after this one. But a lot of people listening in, I've done a few of these webinars, and to be honest, I've never seen the attendance numbers as high. And so you've got a fan club, Cassie. The AP homies came out strong for you today, but there's a lot of people probably sitting there thinking about what's their next leadership role or jumping into a leadership role. And, what advice would you give someone that's sitting there thinking about that next step, that next role, that stepping into leadership for the first time?
Do it. Easier said than done. I was watching a podcast recently. It was Simon Sinek, and he was talking to, I think her name's Mel Robinson, and she was talking about, Nike has a phrase, and the phrase is not do it, it's just do it. And the just part is the part that like keeps people, hung up because they just stop at just and they don't move forward. And so I think sometimes like the just is what holds us back, and we think like, okay, we're not ready for that. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? you're going to learn something out of that experience. You're going to understand more about yourself as a leader. You're going to put yourself out there, which is like imperative, by the way, to you like actually go and promote and do more things. I also think you like having that kind of trust circle of people that you can bounce against to talk about those opportunities, not just the people you can call that'll say yes to you, like Rod will if I called Rod, but if I call Bobby, Bobby's going to tell me like, maybe not, Cassie, like that's probably not your best idea. But like, how do you understand that? I was reading a book, The Anxious Achiever, and one of the quotes in there is a Charles Darwin quote, and it stuck with me. And I'm going to mess this one up too, so Roger he can correct me. He knows it, but it's that ignorance is most connected to confidence over knowledge, and it's just the idea of like most people that are overly confident are not really knowing all the things that they should know, and they're just coming at it from a sign of not knowing. And it most likely means that if you have a little bit of self-doubt or if you have a little bit of imposter syndrome, you're probably doing better than you think you are. Yeah. And like how you harness that to understand that and use that as kind of your superpower to say like, okay, I understand the things that I need to work on and I understand the things that I may or may not know, but I'm still going to take the leap and make myself uncomfortable. Super important.
It's funny, like everyone always defaults to thinking about the worst thing that could happen when you're going to take that leap. But why don't we think about the best thing that could happen and go after it? And as you said, just do it. So, Cassie, hey, appreciate the time you've made answering the questions. Julie, I think I turn it over to you now, and I think there's some Q&A that's come in for Cassie.
There is definitely Q&A. First off, thank you so much. There were some really awesome golden nuggets inside of that. But then somebody was asking, what course do you think to gain better knowledge from a leadership perspective would be? And you had mentioned earlier a situational awareness course. Is there a specific course that you were thinking of when you mentioned that?
Yeah. So Ken Blanchard, if you look it up, but it's situational leadership is the name of the course that you can take, you can apply for. They have an assessment that you can take, and then there's generally reading materials that you can purchase that will go alongside that. But it basically just defines out what type of leader you are currently. And the goal is how do you kind of, between 4 different ways of working, branch that out to where you're not just all directional or all delegation, but how do you as a leader kind of form and basically support the type of person that needs each of those types of leadership.
Okay, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
So one question came in that I think is probably something as a leader we all experience, but sometimes we're not sure how to approach it. What would you recommend as a manager that has somebody under them that they may be a little overconfident for their own good? How would you approach that?
So this is a situation where the overconfidence is sometimes this kind of coping mechanism in a way for people that really aren't as confident as they act to be. And so generally it kind of comes back to this need to feel like I have to be the person that knows the answer for whatever reason. And maybe it's my psychology major kicking in where I'm diagnosing a person. But again, it kind of comes back to just being really transparent in a way that helps the person understand how it's impacting them for future opportunities. So in a way, like, I know that your intention is to do X, Y, Z because like you want to be the person that comes to the table with the answers. You want to show that ultimately you have a high level of intelligence on these subjects and that you can, develop trust with people. However, on the backside of this, maybe other people aren't getting an opportunity to talk at the table, right? And what that can give perception of is that you're not open to listening. So helping people to understand how the perception might be, I always go with this link of like, go with they have the right intention in mind, and then focus on what might the perception be that they're creating. Because again, 9 times out of 10, they don't want that to be the perception, but helping them to understand those stigmas so that they can work through those, but doing it in a way that they feel like it's thoughtful and you're trying to help them, be successful in the future.
I love that. Thank you. All right. So this one came in and the question specifically was, is there a single thing that you do that helps you stay on track when you're meeting with them and you're training with them? Are you putting it on the calendar and just putting a recurring meeting? What does that look like to make sure that you are meeting with them on a regular basis?
Yeah, great question. Yes, I live by my calendar. If I did not put everything on my calendar, I would be an absolute disaster. So yes, calendar is the way to go. They'll probably think this is crazy, but like it does work for me. Calendar's ahead of the calendar where I'll back up into it and say, hey, I got a week until this meeting? Like, what are the things that I need to prepare? And I'll put that time to just like organize my thoughts and make sure that I'm ready for that. What things do I need to follow up on? Oftentimes we set goals that it's 6 months from now, but like, when is the 30-day check-in? When is the 45-day check-in? And so how do you, hold yourself accountable? Like for me, it is calendars, 100%.
Perfect. So this one that had just come in was interesting from something that I've heard in previous roles. Mentorship can be a powerful tool for growth, but it also requires time, balance, and clear expectations. How do you navigate your mentorship relationships to ensure that they're meaningful and effective? What expectations do you set up front, and how do you define success in a mentorship?
When we take on mentorship relationships, you can put a lot on your own plate. And the balance is that there is a lot of ownership, and majority of the ownership really comes from the participant and what they choose to get out of it. And so I will often set the expectation with mine that like, you're only going to get out of this what you put into it. And so it's like, you have to make the time, like you have to be thoughtful about the exercises, and like, you've got to be the one that's setting up that additional time. The other piece is when I do mentor circles, I set them up monthly. We'll have kind of a book assignment or assignment to go back to and talk through during that. And like, it's everybody's responsibility to do that ahead of that meeting. They also understand that like, if I have one of them that's, applying for a job and they want feedback or advice, like that's on their plate to set that time up with me. That's not a thing where I'm going to go out of my way and put that time on the calendar. They need to be the ones to set up that time and support. So it's a bit about, are you putting in as much as what you're getting out, first of all, as a mentor versus a mentee? But there's also a layer of each person has a different definition of success for them. And so you need them to kind of create almost individual development plans and tell the person that's mentoring them, what is the thing that you want out of this? Because the other thing that I'm going to be more deliberate and intentional about is, if I have half the group that wants to, interview for new jobs, I might spend more time on interviewing techniques and how do you think about networking versus if, half the group's just really focused on core skills, like what does that change in the way that I'm meeting with them and how I'm helping them to develop? So I think it's like putting it in people's hands that don't wait for somebody to put the time on the calendar. Like you've got to really take ownership of that, but you have to have an idea of what you want out of it just as much as the person that's mentoring you.
And I loved several of the different things that you had said there. I think the one that stuck out the most to me was specifically that the ownership should be on them and they have to want to get out of it, put in the work to get what they want out of it. So this next question, Bobby, I'm actually going to loop you in a little bit because you may have some other ideas as well. When looking to bring on a new tool, technology, or process within a store environment, what are the main things that an AP or LP leader can do to get buy-in from other key stakeholders across the org? I know, Cassie, that when y'all were piloting, or y'all went out into the field and really sought feedback from boots on the ground is what I would call that. But there are also other potential stakeholders, even outside of just the AP, LP space, your operations side, your other partners. How do you get buy-in from other key stakeholders?
There's a lot of stakeholders. Bobby and I talk about this a lot, but we have several layers, especially when it comes to new technology. As I'm sure many of the other retailers on this call understand that, between the liability piece of things, between how we think about privacy, there's a lot of people that, have to be looped in and involved. But at the end of the day, the business is going to be the best support of that decision. And what I mean by that is that the people that are inside the stores that echo the sentiment of what we're trying to do and ultimately bring the thing to life is like the main reason why something is going to go or not go. Like I know if we go into a boardroom with, our CEO and say, this is what's happening, he's going to look to us or look back to the business and say, operations, AP, is this working or is it not? And that's going to be the go or no go. How you can influence that inside the stores means like, give us honest feedback, tell us what's going on. Like, don't wait for us to be in the facilities. That's a huge piece that I see where we often think like, the home office knows, like we don't always know, like you need to tell us what's going on so that we can help you. And that's part of the, the big piece there. But it's also like you have a huge influence and a huge hand in your associates' training and the knowledge. And it's kind of the whole like, how do we keep nice things? Well, we keep nice things by doing them the right way. And there's misperceptions about things because when we don't do them the right way or we don't train people the right way, that's how they can get really far off the cliff. So how you communicate between your teams, how you gain buy-in from your teams, A lot of it comes from how your associates perceive it and how you train them and make sure that they're up to speed.
Beautiful. Last question, and then we'll wrap things up. Cassie, you do a great job of this. So can you talk about how you lead effective collaboration and communication between other teams to ensure success? So that actually is kind of matched with how are you holding other departments accountable when their delays impact their team's success? So kind of marrying two questions in there.
It kind of goes back to that whole, you're not needing to just develop trusting relationships with your team. However, you've got to think about who are those key stakeholders that you need to be surrounding yourself with and that are going to help you to have common cause. And I know we were talking a little bit before the call about oftentimes it feels like we're in all of these silos and it's this competitive nature of we've all got to get this thing done, but we're all trying to accomplish the same thing. And so helping people kind of come together on a common goal is something that I feel is super important. I have had leaders tell me this is my comfort zone, but I would call it my superpower, is the power of socialization and bringing people along. Just because you don't think that they have to be socialized or brought to the table doesn't mean that they shouldn't be. So the more that you can bring people along, talk to them about what you're doing and clarify the message, because if you don't tell the story, somebody else is really, really, really huge. So how you kind of bring and branch out and bring people along is really important. What that helps with is, again, if people feel like they're on the front side of things, it's kind of that whole, are you filling their cup consistently? Because if I don't bring them in on something, but then I choose to go and hold their team accountable for something, am I really thoughtful on both approaches? So from an expectation standpoint, if people feel like I'm a good partner and I am there to help them and I'm there to go above and beyond to make sure that they're read in and they know what's going on, then they're also going to be more quick to react if I send a note and say hey, this is going to delay this and I really need so-and-so support, and holding accountability to timelines and things of that nature. But a lot of that comes from those really good, sincere partnerships that people feel we're all there to support each other. I'm not best friends with all these people by any means. I'm an introverted extrovert. I have a very small amount of friends, but there is a healthy balance of making sure that people, I don't have to be best friends with them, but they know that I am there to support and that we have the same goals.
Thank you for listening to the Retail Crime Intelligence Podcast by Auror. Don't forget to follow and subscribe on your favorite podcast app.